We're also going to let in our Zoom audience here. Hello, everyone on Zoom in the audience. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. Great to have you all here. Spotlight myself, spotlight our guest for today. We'll get started momentarily. Do a little intro material so we set our context, and then we'll dive into today's fascinating conversation. This is, again, Piano Tech Radio Hour. If you're out there on the live streams on YouTube or Facebook, we will try to share a link. So if you feel like joining the Zoom, you could join the Zoom. It's a little bit closer to the action. Share your comments and questions if you have them, and engage a little bit deeper with the audience, the live audience, and the guests for the day. I will dive into our introductory material here so that everybody gets the context momentarily, and then we'll dive into the conversation. So, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We gather here every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world. This includes manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. You can also subscribe to Radio Hour, just $16 a month. You get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, as well as all the archival recordings of over 200 episodes in our member area. Join using the link bit.ly/joinptrh. Always remember to check out the podcast audio-only version of the show at pianotechradio.com. Check out the Substack, where we introduce some interesting blog articles, and find us on the socials at Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and make sure you subscribe to the email list. If you visit the website, pianotechniciansmasterclass.com, there's a simple sign up for the email list. All right, let's introduce our wonderful guest for the day. This is Eleonor Bindman. She is a celebrated pianist and arranger known for her bold, elegant reimaginings of classical repertoire. Her acclaimed Bach, the Cello Suites for Piano and Goldberg Variations for Piano Duet, have been praised by critics worldwide for their clarity, lyricism, and insight into Bach's genius. Beyond her recordings, Eleonor brings decades of performance, teaching, and creative arranging to audiences who crave a fresh human connection to the great composers. She's an artist who bridges virtuosity with warmth, illuminating the timeless energy behind the notes. Eleonor, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour.
Thank you, Ethan. It's great to be here and illuminate the room and exude all this warmth. I love it.
Let's do it. I don't know if you can tell. I'm starting to be a little bit under the weather this morning, and I feel like my brain's on half speed.
Well, I've been experiencing like a Spanish immersion here.
Oh yeah.
Visiting a friend, and I was actually scared that I wouldn't be able to speak English. Not that my Spanish is so great, but you know how it is. The brain has a life of its own sometimes. So I think we're both good.
Okay, great. Yeah, and for those we haven't informed, Eleanor's coming to us from Barcelona, Spain,
Yeah.
and so we appreciate that. It must be evening,
8
early
p.m.
evening,
8 p.m.
late evening.
6-hour
Okay.
difference. Yeah.
What a wonderful place. Did you since we're just mentioning that, have you gone to the Sagrada Familia this visit or other visits?
Not this visit yet. Apparently now you have to buy a ticket online ahead of time. But I have been several times in very different stages. The last time was about 7-8 years ago.
Okay.
And you could already go in, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. When I went, we didn't go inside. We didn't get the tickets in time, but even just going outside was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one of the things I like to do up front, our regular listeners will know this, is dive back into the annals of your history and and consider what your first moments of music were and how you encountered the instrument that you're on and maybe even those first inklings of, oh wow, this could be my life, this could be my career.
Well, this is about starting childhood, what you mean, right?
Well, whenever it happened. I mean, some
Well,
people pick up music in their teens or something, but yeah, what?
no, I grew up in the former Soviet Union in the Republic of Latvia, a member of an intelligentsia kind of a family. And if you were a child growing up in those times, you weren't really going to sample different extracurricular activities like kids do nowadays. You usually channeled into one serious activity. And
Uh-huh.
my grandmother thought that I have very good sense of music and rhythm, etc. And I went to be tested to get into the local professional kind of music school. So I got in before I was 5, and I was designated for piano, and we had 2 pianos, 2 little uprights at home. So I started playing piano at that age, and fortunately, I was taught by people that descended from the Moscow Conservatory, the very quality school, and I was taught properly. And just to maybe already jump ahead a little bit, I always enjoyed playing Bach, and I once stole a glance into my teacher's notebook when she went out of the room, and I saw that she wrote that I played Bach well, and that kind of, I internalized that. I think that must have been about 10 or 11, and that was probably the beginning of um, my relationship with this composer, the fruit of which I'm now kind of aware of, that I ended up seriously working on transcriptions of his works for piano. And I just wanted to say that I did not work on the Goldberg Variations for
Oh,
4 hands. It was the
oh,
Brandenburg Concertos. I wouldn't presume to
oh,
to redo the Goldberg Variations. It was the
sorry.
Brandenburg Concertos. It's all right. It's just it needed to be said. The
Yeah, thank
Brandenburg
you.
Concertos, which are an orchestral work,
Hmm.
that I felt it would make sense to do a piano duet version of.
Okay,
Um,
wonderful. Sorry about
yeah.
that.
No, it's all right. There's so many. I make mistakes all the time as far as my own work too. So,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
people know the Goldberg Variations, and they might get the wrong idea about me if they think I did a 4-hand version, because that's a
Yes.
no. Yeah.
Yes. Um, yeah, actually, I was just listening to the Glenn Gould recently, and it's just like it's so amazing, you know?
Yes.
Um, okay. So you started young. It was kind of a channel that you're put on, but you took to it. You know, you resonated with it, and Bach was an
Yes.
early strong influence. What do you
Yes.
think it is about Bach? Is it there's kind of like that mathematical quality, that very the structure, um, maybe the interesting rhythms and counterpoints. Like, what do you think drew you to that as opposed to the other directions?
Well, it could be my kind of innate personality. I'm kind of a bit of an intellectual introvert, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's the rhythm, is the structure, um, it's the symmetry. I think our brains, or I've read about this, and it's a question that people have asked me many times, and I thought about what is it about Bach, because certainly musicians love Bach. The general public doesn't always respond to Bach, but I think there are regions of our brain that respond non-verbally to things like symmetry and order and patterns and structure. And his music is largely based on that. Rosalind Turek, who is my personal idol, she speaks very well about Bach, and his music is really all about the structure and the connection and the whole that's made of different structural parts. And if you look at it, if you analyze it, if you can, you see how the craftsmanship is almost, it's almost impossible to really fathom how he could have done all of this in a lifetime. So
Mm,
there's a quality that we're kind of in awe of.
mm,
And it appeals to me also, the level of concentration, it's very serious. I like all kinds of music. As a matter of fact, I started just now, I'm transcribing some Spanish guitar music because I love romantic music as well. But there's something about the state in which one finds itself when performing or playing Bach or even studying, that's very satisfying on some level to me personally.
mm. Yes. I don't know that I ever read the book, but I've heard a lot about it. I think it's called like Gödel, Escher, Bach. Are you
Bach,
familiar with
yes.
this
I
book?
haven't read it either, but I knew people who loved it. For me,
Mm,
it was a little too, you know, obscure. The Gödel and Escher. I love Escher.
mhm.
Gödel, I believe, was a mathematician or
Mathematician,
physicist.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know much about him, but I can see how Escher would be compared to Bach because
But
it's the patterns, it's the
let's check out
interrelation.
let's check out a recording. You shared some videos that we thought might be interesting, and one of them is the Brandenburg Duets Concerto Number 5. Should we check that out first? Do you want to give any background?
It was just me recording after I completed the transcription of the 6 Brandenburg concertos for 4 hands. It's me and the wonderful pianist Jenny Lin in the Sona Lumino studios in Virginia, recording Brandenburg number 5, the first movement.
Right, let's take a look and a listen.
The dynamics are working well. If you can, at bar, pick up to 21, we're dropping there, yes?
I would like to drop there, yes.
Yeah, let's do it even more.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, good. All right, let's go again. Here we are with 265.
Wonderful. Okay.
People with blood cancer
We
want
do
more.
not need ads. Thought I had autoplay off on my YouTube. Um, all right. Wonderful. Um, Tell me about the process of transcription.
Um, well, transcription of Bach has been done starting Bach himself, and there are very many famous composers, many of them who transcribed it. For me personally, as a pianist who has played many pieces who were transcriptions of orchestral works already, I always enjoyed the feeling of producing the sound that would imitate an orchestra. I always found it very empowering and interesting. And I always enjoy trying to imitate the sounds of orchestral instruments. For example, we were taught you're playing a Beethoven sonata, you listen to Beethoven symphonies, and you imagine when you interpret different instruments, you're not just playing the notes on the piano. So I always enjoyed it. And I also had a very long time a duo piano partner, because not all pianists enjoy playing with others on the same keyboard. I'm sure you know it's either siblings or married couples. Pianists don't like to share. It's a very tight space. So I enjoyed both. And I love playing 4-hand repertoire. And actually, there was an existing version of the Brandenburg concertos that was transcribed by a German composer in around the 1920s and conductor named Max Reger. People know his name, and he transcribed many works by Bach. But for some reason, his version of the 4 hands of the Brandenburg concertos and also the orchestral suites is just awful. And I say, yeah, I'm sorry to be, so negative about it, but nobody plays it. There are plenty of very famous piano duos and pianists like Martha Argerich who enjoy playing, but nobody ever plays them because they're unplayable. Yet they exist, and I had the scores for many years, and I attempted to play them with my partner, and we could never play it because essentially the problem was that all the treble instruments, of which there are many, were allocated to the top part, and all the bass instruments, which were really just the cellos and the basses, were in the bottom part. So the secondo part, the bottom part of the duet person was always bored and only playing octaves and very few notes, whereas the primo part was extremely difficult and so full of counterpoint. It looked like clusters of chords, like literally it's some kind of jungle. So you couldn't even see what's going on as far as the counterpoint. So it was impossible to play. So I decided to see once in 1914, sorry, in 2014, I decided
Way
to
back
see
in
if I,
1914.
yes, well, I'm a lot actually older than I look. So,
Vampire.
yeah.
Vampire.
So I wanted to tweak one of them and see if I can redo my own version. And I realized that I would have to start from scratch. So I did Concerto No. 2, and I played it in concert with my partner. And I realized that it sounded really good. And I also understood, I'm sorry to be patting myself on the back, but I've taken orchestration. I'm a duo pianist, and I'm a pianist. That I actually is something that I can do reasonably well. So I thought I should do all 6 so they can finally become something that's playable in the canon of piano forehand music. And of course, it's the most wonderful music. Bach didn't write any more purely orchestral music. He wrote the cantatas and oratorios when he was employed as a church musician. But so it took me 3 years to complete that. And the process, to get back to your original question, was very time consuming. A lot of it had to do with data entry into, software. And it was very difficult to edit because most of the time I needed to try to somehow reproduce what it would be like to play with 4 hands, and I had to call somebody to do it with. So it wasn't easy. And actually I made a little funny YouTube video called The Bockumentary that's on my YouTube channel about what it was like, because my kids at the time were about 12 and 10, and it was just, it took a lot of time, but I persevered because I really wanted to play the concertos, and that's what motivated me in my further transcriptions, as well as wanting to play certain music that I couldn't play, which was not keyboard intended.
Well, congratulations on accomplishing
Thank you.
that. Yeah, and I hear what you're saying. If you could think it through a little bit better, than putting all those clusters, for example, in the treble, um, you could make it more beautiful. So I appreciate your commitment to it.
Thank you. I
Let's try.
think if you don't mind, the word is clarity, because the way I approached it was kind of like a 4-part invention. I had to take out a lot of viola parts and stuff, but to preserve the counterpoint. So it was very
And
different.
on this funny YouTube video that you mentioned, is that the one you shared as well, or is that different?
Which
You
one?
shared the one where you're sort of dressed up at the beginning.
That one
Was
is
it
of
in the period?
my last recording. The Bach Brandenburgs were done for 4 hands. The
Okay.
funny one in period costume is from my last cycle that I transcribed for piano, which is of his lute suites, which are usually played on lute or lute harpsichord. So this March, I finished transcribing and recording and released his lute suites. And they contain this famous beret that Jethro Tull and other people used in their recordings. So the funny one that I sent is I dress up in Baroque costume for fun.
Let's take a look.
Great.
We had another guest on here. He's more like he's a very good pianist, but he sells pianos. And
This isn't the one we're talking about, but it's a good one too.
this isn't the one. Oh, let me just make sure I get the right one. So I
The
have
next one,
this is it.
yeah, this is the one. Yeah.
This is that one.
Right.
Yeah, he did this thing called Living Piano, the Living Piano. That's kind of his brand. And he did this
Mhm.
thing when he was younger where he turned around and he actually brought a harpsichord with him and different period pianos. And he had
Mhm.
this whole shtick that he put together where he would do a performance for audiences and he would dress up in the different periods of the different instruments and teach people, play the music, but also teach people about the history of the instrument. So you reminded me of his project. I actually never saw him dressed up. You would only describe
Mhm. Yeah.
it. Wonderful.
It's funny. This video actually got some interesting feedback on YouTube. Some people were upset with me for making fun, but there's always someone. But this is an atypical thing because I'm actually doing a somewhat jazzy kind of rockabilly repeat bass, which is the only time I do it on this recording. But I really enjoy taking some liberties doing repeats. It's one of my kind of pet peeves that a lot of musicians these days stick to the older kind of a period instrument idea of repeats. And I don't think that if that were to continue, or Bach would, want to keep exactly the same preserved repeat tradition. So once in a while, I like to depart from it. So this was kind of an extreme case, just because I felt I kind of paid my dues as far as transcription the right way and thought I'd have some fun.
Very nice. Oh, and just like going a little bit far afield from Bach, what are some of the other things that you're interested in musically, be it from the classical world or any place else? What else inspires you?
I love jazz. I went to the High School of Performing Arts just upon arrival to this country, and I was lucky enough to be in the same class with some people who became pretty well-known jazz musicians. So in the spare time, I love jazz. I love Afro-Cuban jazz. As far as the piano, I love flamenco music. Actually, as a matter of fact, I'm going to hear Chano Dominguez, who is the preeminent kind of flamenco fusion jazz pianist, whom I happen to know. He lived in Brooklyn for a little bit. I'm looking forward to hearing him. So I love that, and maybe because of that, I kind of had the goal to do what I just did on this video, which is really not that adventurous, but for a classical recording, it is maybe. But as far as piano playing, I do love Spanish music. I love Albéniz especially. And I guess the Russian Romantic repertoire. My recordings to date include either Russian Romantic music or Bach. So, and the next one will be Spanish music. So,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Well, you could say hi to Chano Dominguez. For me, you can tell him Ethan said hi.
Oh, yeah. Do you know him?
Yeah, he's been on the show,
Oh,
and
great.
I was his piano tuner in Brooklyn when he was
Oh,
living
really?
there.
Isn't he
Yes,
great? I just love him. He's so much fun.
he's wonderful.
Yeah.
When I was visiting Barcelona, I think it was this last year, I went to his house. Yeah, I took a
Oh,
drive, went to his house, and it was fun. We played around his recording studio a little bit. I recorded nothing great on my part. I tried. I just wasn't
Mm.
prepared. But
Yeah, you didn't know it was coming,
no,
right?
no. Yeah. And
Yeah,
we played a little ping pong and we had a little lunch.
that's great.
But yeah, he's a good guy. Um, and I
What's
love that you know him and that you're gonna go see him too. Like
Yeah,
you're
and
gonna go see him play.
I'm gonna tell him I was in the same show. He's actually what he's doing is he's providing musical accompaniment to a silent film. It just so
Oh,
happened, because he travels around a lot playing, and
yeah.
this is kind of like, I guess, an off the grid maybe performance for him. But it so happens that while I'm here next Tuesday, this coming Tuesday,
Hmm.
I think it's El Amor Brujo, the film by the preeminent classic Spanish director whose name Luis Buñuel, maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it's a film. He'll be playing the piano while we'll be watching a film.
Oh, wow. That sounds great.
Yeah, I
Um,
can't wait.
yeah, when I was there, I took a train. Um, it took me maybe 45 minutes, and then the train stop went into this little winery. It was right off the train, and they had an outdoor concert, and he was playing, and they had little wine you could sip and little chips,
Yeah,
and it was great. Um,
I'll
all
tell
right.
him. We're on the same
Yeah, yeah.
show. Will be funny.
Yeah. Yeah, he's great. We'll check out another one of these recordings. And so how about that the one that I almost showed before, the J.S. Bach Cello Suites for solo piano? You check that one out?
Yeah, that's my kind of bestseller. I also I sell scores through my website because my thing is I want to provide some new repertoire to pianists. So I'm doing this kind of because primarily I wanted people to be able to play the Bach duets. And then I
Uh,
realized that as I was growing my social media following and et cetera, people started telling me what I should do. And the
uh-huh.
cello suites were next, and they're my bestseller. They're much more easy than the Brandenburg duets.
Yes, yeah. It's fascinating how far you go with the things that are already known, versus the things that are maybe a little bit more far afield.
Yes.
Very nice. Have
Thank
you
you.
have you learned anything special looking at Bach's own transcriptions of his own music? Like, is there some sort of a method to the madness, a pattern? or
Honestly, I only learned that I shouldn't be afraid to do it myself. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, especially in his own days when he was transcribing. He basically just changed instruments. You know, there's part of the lute suites that is sometimes played on other instruments, and he actually transcribed concerti by other his contemporary composers like Vivaldi and other Italian composers. So I just learned that it's a very reasonable thing to do, and it actually gave me a lot of courage because this particular project, the cello suites, took a lot of really resolve because I was very hesitant to record something because it's something that is essentially written for cello and also something as beloved as a core of the cello repertoire, and to transcribe it for piano because why do it, you know? And I got a lot of, you know, there were cellists who were perfectly fine with it, and there were cellists who wrote to me, why you taking it away from us, you know? And the point was that I believe that these particular pieces are invaluable as repertoire for, let's say, adult amateurs, with whom I have made a lot of connections since then, and also for young students because Bach's works for keyboard for the early years are very good, but there aren't that many of them, and even to learn inventions with two voices, for example, or the little minuets, which are not the greatest of his music, is really a very small part of what he's done. And a lot of people have trouble even coordinating hands when it comes to Bach. So what I learned actually transcribing these cello suites was that they gave me a lot of insight into Bach's language as a whole, because as a keyboardist, I'm used to seeing several voices at once. So when I'm looking at Bach, I'm seeing a kind of a bigger, more complex picture. But when I was transcribing the cello suites, obviously they were very simple, mostly one line, except for the double stops and chords. And it made me zero in the smallest increments of his language, the little 3, 4 letter patterns out of which he forms the line, because I also had to divide them between the two hands, which was, you know, it's not difficult to play, but you do have to think, how is it that I should divide this between two hands for this to make sense? And that really taught me how to pay attention to one line of Bach with my full attention, and how to see how he crafts things. And now when I look at three voice fugues or the inventions, it's a much richer experience. And I think that in retrospect, I'm very happy that I wasn't scared to make such a simple piano transcription, because now it's totally the bestseller. You know, the score has been published in Russia. Unfortunately, Russian scores are not really accessible here now, but it's what I sell the most. It's my most popular score, and I found it really satisfying to play, you know, which is why I ended up doing it. But it was very scary, because imagine a pianist recording something that's basically one note at a time for an entire hour. You know, there are 36 movements. You know, when I was writing booklet notes for it, I actually broke out into a rash, literally, because I felt I had to justify doing this as a pianist. I thought people were going to laugh at me.
Mm. Well, people do have their own opinions. I'm sure
Right.
somebody laughed,
Yes.
but
And
it's
that's
okay.
fine. Right. But I
Um,
get a lot of emails, especially from adult
yeah,
amateurs
yeah.
who cannot play his fugues, you know,
Uh-huh.
and who can play this music, and it's very satisfying to them. They feel, you know, they feel good about their playing, and they're playing Bach. So that's something.
Yeah. Actually, that I'm always in favor of something odd or, out of the ordinary. And you mentioned the idea of recording a whole album of basically one note at a time on the piano, right?
Right.
And I feel like um in its original, it's a cello, right? So that's an instrument where you expect one note at a time, or like a flute or whatever. There's certain instruments
Yeah.
where you expect one note at a time, and that's just how it is. Then you would listen to a whole album. I mean, it actually made me think, that would be actually an interesting creative exercise to write music, that is just one note at a time for the piano. I think sometimes we we use things because they're there,
Or
you know,
most of the time.
yeah, well, I mean, but just because they're there, right? So that
Yes.
got me to thinking when you said, yeah, it's a piano and you're only playing one note. It's like, yeah, why not just play one note, right? It's just because you have all these choices, you're expected to implement them, but they're the real creative act, or not the real
Yes.
creative, but one real creative
Oh,
act is to go, you know what? I'm just gonna write single lines and make the most of
yeah.
that on the piano.
Yeah.
Um,
Look at our part. His music is very minimalist.
mhm,
But you're right. And well, for a pianist, it's, you have to play fast and a lot of notes at a time, and you have to, that's what makes you good, right? But to play one note at a time, well, even
mm,
for a minute, is not so good. Because this is a piano tuners program, right? I have to say that had I not been fortunate enough to have a Bosendorfer at my disposal to record this, I don't think I would have ever recorded the cello suites per se.
mm,
But that instrument has such a wonderful register, the cello register. It's so beautiful that I was inspired to use that. Had I had a piano that was different, I don't know if I would have done that, honestly.
mm. And is
So
that your home piano, or
yes,
because there's a few pianos we've seen? Okay.
it's my piano. Yeah, I'm very
Um,
lucky to have it.
yeah, yeah, those are beautiful instruments. Um, is there a story behind it, or just kind of like, oh, look for one and get it? Did you get it new, used? You have an assistance in finding it, or
There's a story, but actually, the part of the story that I'd like to share is that I got it from an air-conditioned environment in Connecticut in the dead of winter, and there was a ladybug, a live ladybug on it as I came to it the second time, and I saw that as a sign. So that's the story that I'd like to share because it was kind of a little bit magical.
yeah, that's very cute. I don't know that I've ever seen a ladybug on a piano. Even all the pianos that I've seen, I don't ever have seen
In
one on it.
February, in an air, in the piano showroom in Connecticut in February, and it was alive. So
Yeah,
I'm not making this up. I couldn't make this up.
it's blessed. Let's talk a little bit about your global, you know, experiences here. So you're in Spain right now. I don't think we caught, whether you're there professionally or personally or both. Um, and then you were living in New York. You said you're Latvian. Right? That's
Right.
where you said Latvia
Well,
originally.
I was born in Latvia. Yes.
You're born in Latvia.
Right.
Um, are there other places that you are kind of your life has been affiliated with, and how has traveling affected your musical experience?
Well, I can't say that there are any steady places other than, when I was 14, my family immigrated to the States. When I was of the,
To New
campus
York directly, or where did they
to
go?
Brooklyn, New York. Yes.
Oh wow, okay.
Well, not directly. We stayed in Vienna in Austria for about a month, and then in Italy for about 4 months. That was the protocol, and this was back in the early 80s. And as far as other places, I've always loved Spain, and when I was on the piano competition circuit, when I used to do competitions in my early 20s, late teens, um, I took it as a possibility to travel. So I loved just going because, it was a reason because I couldn't really afford to travel. My mother wouldn't let me except if I was going to a competition. So I came to a couple of competitions in Spain and I kind of fell in love with the country. I always loved flamenco guitar. So I don't think there are any other places that
Mm,
I love to travel. I've been to many places, but I returned to Spain um, a lot. I have some musical connections here. And just overall, I think it helps me have a perspective on how to play music because I think had I not have an understanding of flamenco, I wouldn't be able to play Albeniz. If I didn't love, see that I wouldn't understand what the music is about because sometimes people do play it without trying to imbue it with the dance, the guitar, the percussion, all of that. And of course, culturally, I'm Russian, so I have an understanding of Russian music. Russian is mother tongue. And, I think America is a good country to be in, despite all of the fluctuations, but overall, it is what it is. So I think it's important to travel and to kind of sample different cultures, especially, or at least make an effort of if you're playing music from different parts
Yeah.
of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting your New York experience. It's a very unique age to land in New York. And from where you're from, 14, it's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
you're kind of just gonna get into a high school,
right.
and I don't know, your English probably needed some work.
For sure. Yes, of course. It still
And
does probably. Can always improve our English.
but then, it's like you really only get a couple of years then to be in the high school environment until you're off to another place. And
Yeah.
then you don't have like I've interviewed, I like to talk about New York sometimes with guests.
Hmm.
We've had guests that came from the Netherlands, from Amsterdam, and it's like, oh, and we talked about how you're in New Amsterdam, in New York is New
Right.
Amsterdam. We
Right.
talked about that and how some of the street names are the same. You probably wouldn't realize it if you live in New York, but in Amsterdam, street names are the same, or like, places
Yes.
are called out.
Actually, in Brooklyn, there are a lot of like New Utrecht Avenue, and
Yes,
there's a lot of names like that. Yeah.
exactly. Um,
Amsterdam is great. I love Amsterdam. I haven't been back, but it's a great place.
Yeah. But for you, I feel like it's a little bit harder to be self-aware about it because you were just put in that context and you were in such a place where so much going on transitionally. You're just like, well, here I am. I'm in New York. But do you have
Well,
any reflections on what it's like to be you're like I would call you a New Yorker because you came at such a formative time in your life.
yeah, I think it's fair to say I'm a New Yorker. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that there's something about the age, because when you're 14, you're becoming a different person. You all of a sudden realize that, you're not a child anymore, and you are very self-aware, and there's a whole identity. You're just, everything is like, oh, wow. So I was thrown into New York at that age. And I think I was very lucky to get into the High School of Performing Arts in particular,
Mm,
because it was a small place. There were about 500 students. And I was actually the last graduating class. It was the Fame School then, and then it became the Music and Art School um, of New York, Fiera LaGuardia. But there were kids of all creeds, of all colors, of all, um, economic levels, and everybody was really into their passion. We had the music department, we have the dance department, and the drama department, which was especially famous. And we all kind of were into that, and we all understood each other because of that special thing that we had, that we each identified with, and that made us us. And most of the kids in our music department were going into band and jazz, the classical. It wasn't a conservatory. And it's really made me open to all kinds of music. And, I'm still one of those classical musicians that loves to listen to salsa, and I'll be driving and my friend's classical musician would be like, what are you listening to? I'm like, I love this. So I think it does help interpret things. There's a certain freedom, and I think it's a very important quality, humanly, to be in a place like New York where you need to coexist with, everybody else, and there's a freedom and there's an understanding of people kind of living their lives differently.
and how much are you continuing to be able to connect with your Russian culture while you're there versus, the New York culture? Because I do know New York does offer that, right? Because you can
Oh,
kind of take your
yes.
country with you in some ways. Um,
Yes. Well, I
yeah.
went through, stages. When I started working on teaching music and teaching piano,
Mhm.
a lot of my colleagues were Russian musicians. We worked in smaller music schools within colleges, etc. I never lived in a Russian populated area like Brighton Beach and so on. But I had some friends, you gravitate towards some Russian immigrants. And in college, I didn't because I went to NYU. So it was mostly professional, and it really was music related, my Russian connections at this point. And of course, family. My husband is American, and so are our children, obviously, but my daughter learned Russian. And as far as Latvia, I've been back and I have some friends who are still there. So it's not that hard to seek it out if I want to. But I'm also very interested in learning about new cultures. I really feel I've assimilated all there is to assimilate about Russia at this point, especially. So
All right, great. Well, thanks for sharing. All right, we have one more recording I'd love to pan it over to. So let me pull that up. This is the new piano
Well,
recording of J.S. Bach's Lute Suites.
yeah. Can I give like a short intro just
Go
because we're
ahead.
probably gonna kind of round up. So basically in the past 10 years, I transcribed 4 major cycles of Bach's work. I started with the 6 Brandenburg concertos, then I did the 6 cello suites. And then because Bach also wrote the 4 orchestral suites, I felt that I also need to transcribe them because they also existed in the Max Reger version that nobody played. And then the last thing I did was 1 CD set, because the others are 2 CD sets actually, of the BWV 9 and 6, 9 and 7, 998, which are works which were written for the lute, or the lute harpsichord, the Lautenwerk, which was at that time called that. So this just came out this March, and this is from the last, it's actually from the prelude, Allegro prelude and fugue of his BWV 9 and 6. This is the last movement, the Allegro.
Wow. Really love that.
Yeah, it was fast, right? It sounds
Yeah.
like I'm good because it was fast.
Ah,
Unlike the cello suite.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
great. It's very uplifting.
Yeah, and some of those rhythms too. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
it was a little bit of the repeats again. I did a little what is it called? Hemiola, I think.
okay, okay, got it. Um, yeah, it was beautiful. Thanks for putting that together.
Yeah.
All right, so we will be wrapping up pretty soon here. I do like to give the guests a chance to give some final thoughts or send people off. You know, we've talked about various recordings. Maybe you want to send them to a website or a download or whatever. It's your
Sure.
time. Anything?
Well, me or the guests?
You're the
Well,
guest.
no, I mean, I've been lucky in that all of my recordings, because they're original transcriptions and the Bach Brandenburg transcriptions were they're distributed because they were new and they were very popular. So all of the recordings are streaming on all platforms. So they're all accessible if you enter my name, or Brandenburg Duets, for example. They're all out there, so it'd be great. And my website, of course, eleanorbindman.com, has all kinds of things, the CDs, the scores, the piano scores, which again are especially popular with amateur musicians and piano teachers, because it's new repertoire that I'm trying to kind of push, which takes people a while to be open to something new. But the idea is that it's fantastic music by Bach, which is transcribed with the utmost respect. I don't make up anything that's not even there yet, but sometimes I take away some things that are just filler, and it's a great experience to play them. So,
Wonderful.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. We have reached the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks again here for Eleanor Bindman for joining us today. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses on cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. If you join us today by signing up for this session individually, you can make your life more convenient by subscribing to Piano Tech Radio Hour, just $16 a month. You get the recording of today's session in our member area, as well as automatic registration for each week's new session. Sign up at bit.ly/join PTRH, bit.ly/join PTRH. And don't forget to check out the podcast only version, pianotechradio.com, the Substack, the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Sign up for the email list at the website, and you'll get updates about these programs and who our guests are and recaps and all that wonderful stuff. And beyond that, there's a new project that's come out that's somewhat affiliated. It's the Future Education Podcast. So you can go to uotu.xyz to check that out. Excited about that new endeavor. And without further ado, we'll sign off. Eleanor, if you want to just jump back on the same Zoom after I close it out, you and I can do a quick wrap up. Okay?
All right, that'd be great. Thank you so much for having me.